Alright guys, so let's get ready. Roll's done everything else. Make sure you get your JSAs, your study guides out. We're going to go over those briefly, and then I'm going to give you some time at the end of the lesson to finish up that JSA. Alright, and that's going to be turned in before you walk out today, okay? Real quick, before we jump on that, tomorrow, the storm last week kept us up, right? So you guys know we normally have regularly scheduled classroom discussion, debate stuff. We're going to start that off Friday. That'll open up class tomorrow. The way you are sitting right now is going to be the split, okay? So this side's going to be a team. I need y'all to quickly figure out who you want to be your captain, okay? And then this side, you guys are a team. Quickly figure out that captain position. So who you got? Who you got? Talk to me. Yeah. Easy. All right. This side. Adaeus. Roman. Everybody good with Roman or Adaeus?
I don't know about me.
All right. It's Roman then. We're going to take turns. Everybody's going to get a chance to take that lead position each time. And at the end of class, get that for me. Yes, ma'am. So, I've got a topic picked out in mind that I want to start out with. But since you guys are my more advanced class this semester, right, as a lesson 2 honors, I will give you a chance. Is there any particular good debate topic that comes to the top of your minds that's on your mind or in current events or something that you would like to throw out before we make a decision? I will listen to it. Anybody got anything? Nothing? Okay, so tomorrow, green energy, green debate, your role in the green environment, right? We discovered that when you were in core curriculum. This side, you will be for green initiatives, right? You're going to be looking for argumentative reasons to explain why we need more green initiatives, right, to combat climate change.
Yeah.
This side, you will be against additional green initiatives. Everybody good? This doesn't matter whether it's what you actually believe or not, right? Remember what we talked about before. Leave your personal beliefs out of it. We're looking for proper research. Don't come in with your beliefs, right? It does no good to say I believe the earth is flat, right? We need empirical evidence backing up when we do the debate, right? So don't just come in and say, I don't believe in climate change, blah, blah, blah. That's not applicable for, right, for educational debate. So you will get a little bit of time to make sure you got the organization right of who's going to be looking for what particular data so y'all can compile it. And we'll have a fun debate for about 30 minutes, the first 30 minutes of class tomorrow. All right, sound good? All right, JSAs, we're going to turn them in today. Real quick. We were in the shop yesterday, you looked at the project. Let me hear from a couple of you. What were some specific tasks that you guys, somebody over here tell me a specific task.
Take down the wires and everything like that.
All right, demoing the wires, okay. Did you already assign particular hazards to that task?
Yeah, electrical shock or something like that.
Electrical shock. And you've already come up with a way in your other column,
Protective gear,
protective gear, protective.
glasses and stuff like that.
Good. Somebody over here, what's one of the tasks, not counting demo and wire that you listed, that's going to need to be performed on that job?
Removing light fixtures.
Removing the light fixtures. How about the associated hazards with that? What do you have listed for that? Anybody else got one? Removing the light fixtures, they're up high. What's going to be one hazard you got to account for? Fall safety, right? Ladders, okay? So make sure you got a proper fall protection plan listed on what you're going to be doing for that, okay? All right, so at the end of the actual class discussion, you're going to get a little bit of time to tidy those up, and we'll turn those in at the end of the day, all right? Study guides, real quick. And then we're going to get into tying and connecting the dots, which is what we're doing today for the lesson, okay? On your study guide, I'm giving you a couple of little additive things to help you as you do your own research and reading. And then tomorrow, we're going to go through a couple more of the chapters, and we're going to see what your responses are and what you found on your study guide, okay?
Yeah.
Just to review what we covered over, number 1 was section 1.1.2, number 2 was 1.1.1, 3 was 1.3.1, 4 was 1.2.0, 5 was 1.4.4, all right? 6 is going to be 1.5.0, number 7, number 8, and number 10 are all in sections 1.6.1. Number 9 is 1.6.6. Got to take you through number 10. If you notice 1.6.1 on that study guide has 3 specific questions, right? Take that as a hint as you're looking through it and as we go through the years, I give you the study guides. When that pegs up like that, make sure you're really focused and paying attention on that section when you're going through it. Because that means that is a section that's going to be well represented on the test, okay? All right, any questions? Everybody good?
Yeah.
All right, let's start connecting the dots. So we've been working on, we've been talking about with this unit and passages, right? We've been going over that. Let's go and look at, and y'all know my drawing's terrible, but I'm going to draw two size wires here. These are really, really overblown because we're going to call this one the number 12, and that's the number 10, right? Which one of those is going to give you higher ampacity? Which one's going to give you higher ampacity? Number 10, right? Why? It's bigger, right? What are the 3 main factors we talked about that affect the ampacity of the wire?
The lower it is, the more electricity it has.
Say that again.
The lower it is, like, the more electricity it has.
You're talking about the wire numbers, right? Okay, so that's not wrong, but it's not talking about the ampacity. He was saying that the lower the number is on the American wire gauge scale, the larger the wire is, which is correct, right?
Yeah.
But why does, we just said number 10 is a larger wire than number 12, so it's going to have more ampacity, right? So one of the first factors is size. You may want to write that down, or make sure you got a note, right? What is another factor? Right, okay. How about the material that it's made out of?
Conductivity.
Material makes a difference, right? Which one has better conductivity, aluminum or copper? Copper. How about copper and silver? Right. So the better conductivity is going to give you an increased ampacity, right? So the material that the wire is made out of is another key factor, right?
Yeah.
And then the installation and environmental differences. Remember we talked about heat rating factors between whether it's rated at 30 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Celsius. Remember that? That's the one people a lot of times forget. It's easy to get the size and the material into our head because those are all things we can just kind of visually get a feel for, right? But that third are conditions. Okay, you want to know, make sure you got those 3 and know the differences on those. Make sure you realize aluminum is not as conductive as copper, right? Therefore, are you going to need a larger wire in aluminum or a smaller wire in aluminum to carry the same amount of ampacity and current that you would in copper? You're going to have a larger aluminum wire than you would in copper, right? Okay, keep these things in mind. We're getting ready to connect these dots with what we talked about with our circuit design, right? All right, let's go to circuits. Get your papers out. We're going to have fun. We're going to work a couple of these. We've got to make sure we're still maintaining and refreshing and keeping everything together. All right, let's work this one together. But you guys are going to be doing the answering on it. Write this down and you can start it. So we got our source. We're going to go 120 volts. soon, I'm gonna let some of y'all come up here and draw these, because as I've gone around and checked y'all, I've noticed that your circuit drawings are a lot neater than mine. All right, we're gonna go with 120 volts. So we've got that one already plugged in, right? Our volts, we're gonna go for our resistance. Our amps, and our watts. You got your calculators and your math brains on, right? All right, let's do it. Let's assign, let's go 6 ohms. This is R1, R2, can everybody see what I'm doing across this way? R1, 2, 3, 4, and this would be 5. R1 is going to be at 6 ohms. We're going to do R2. Let's just go 8. R3, let's make it 10. Let's just keep having fun with that. We'll make R4 12. We'll make R5, for no seeming reason, we'll just make it 15. All right, those are your resistance ratings for each of those resistors in the sequence. Okay, what type of circuit do we have?
Series parallel.
A series parallel, right? And why is it a series parallel? It's a combination of both. Which resistors in this circuit are part of the series? 1 and 5 are part of the series circuit, right? And then 2, 3, and 4 are what? Part of the parallel portion of the circuit, right? So, if we're going to find our total resistance, what do we solve for first?
The parallel.
We solve the parallel portion first? All right. How many resistors do we have in that parallel section?
3.
Cut this thing down, it's getting on my nerves. We've got 3, so which formula will we use? Hang on just a second. All right, which formula are we going to use?
1 over R1 plus 1 over R2 plus 1 over R3.
I got you. All right, perfect. RT, total resistance, equals 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2, R3, as many of them as we have, right? Okay, why can't we not use the shortcut formula of R1 times R2 over R1 plus R2?
So that's for only 2.
That's only if there's 2 resistors in parallel. Good job. So now, setting up this formula here for total resistance, how are we going to plug in our numbers? Y'all tell me, I'm just the writer. Y'all are the doers. I'm just recording it, okay? I'm just the writer here. What are we plugging in? 1 over
1 over 8.
that one?
Yeah, 1 over 8.
Plus 1 over 10 plus? Good. Y'all getting this back in your brains good now, aren't you? We had to wake them up from summer a little bit, but they're there now. What's our common denominator between 8, 10, and 12? That was going to be fun, isn't it?
60? No. 72. No, never mind. Wouldn't it be?
That works for 8 and 12, but not for 10, right?
120?
I think it's going to be 120. Any? Yep. Will 8 go into 120?
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so let's work it out. And remember also, what's our other option here? I'm wanting us to do them with the fractions because I just want to make sure we're refreshing, finding the common denominators and doing it that way, right? But we can also convert those straight to a decimal at this point, right?
Yeah.
And you can just divide 1 by 8, which is 0.125, that would be 0.1. What's 1 divided by 12?
0, 8, 3.
Right, and you can punch that in, and you can add those and roll with it. But for the purposes of making sure we're waking our brains back up and getting them really geared back up, we're going to keep doing it by putting these into a common denominator. So 1 over, we're going to use 120. All right, let's fill these tops in. 8 goes into 120 how many times?
15 times.
15. How about 10?
12.
How about 12?
10.
All right, so what we got? RT equals 1 over 37 over 120. And then we know that when we've got a division, and we've got that 1 on the top, and this will show up every time in this formula, what does that basically tell us our answer is? It's 1 divided by 37 1/20, which means that's the same as 1 multiplied times what? The reciprocal, so it's 1, so the answer is just gonna be, the total resistance will equal 120 over 37. Somebody pull out your trusty calculators and tell us. We know it's gonna be 3 point something. 3.243?
Yeah.
All right, let's roll with it at just 3.24. We'll do 2 decimals on it, all right? So we got, what do we do once we get that number? That equals 3.24. What have I told you we want to do when we're figuring out and calculating the circuit? Let's write it big right here so we know that that just accounted for these, right? 3.24 ohms is the total resistance for that parallel portion. Now we just turn it into what type of circuit? Series circuit. How do we solve total resistance for a series circuit? Add them all up. R1 plus R2 plus R3, so forth and so on. All right? So now our total resistance is going to be what? What's our numbers that we're using? 6 plus 15 plus 3.24, right?
Yeah.
Because once we figure out the total resistance for this portion of the circuit, that figures into the series resistance, right? So what's our total resistance? 24.24. Good job. So let's put that here. 24.24 ohms. How do we figure out what our ampacity is on this circuit? We're probably going to, let's make sure we're touching on the Ohm's Law portion of it. Which version of Ohm's Law are we going to use? You're not wrong, I just want to make sure we're reinforcing. I over ER? E over IR. You had the right letters, right? So we've got 2 choices. We got E over IR, and we've also got, what's the other one? P over IE, right? Pi. Y'all are doing really, really good. So you guys told me that we're doing this one first, right? Because we're looking for the amps, and the amps is which letter? The I for what? Intensity, right? So we've got the electromotive force, voltage, intensity, amps, resistance is measured in ohms, right? So if we're looking for amps, put your hand on that, and we're doing what? E divided by R, which is exactly what Roman was telling us. 120 divided by 24.24. Once again, give me these numbers. What you got? 4.95. So we've got 4.95 amps. Now, how do we figure out the total circuit wattage? We're using the same formula here? This one?
Yeah.
Which one of those is the wattage? P for power, right? So if we're looking for that one, we can cover that up, and we know we got to do what with the I and E? Multiply I times E. What's our I? Our amps. Our E, 120. So we multiply 120 times 4.95. 594. 594 watts. Excellent. It's more fun when I just have to listen to y'all and then write down what y'all are saying. But everything y'all said was right on the money with it. So we feel good about that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Coach Kenny, how is this going to all tie in with what we're learning about wire ampacity? let's take this portion, right? Because now we've got voltage, we've got watt, our amperage, and we've got wattage, right? Now, let's look into it as we move on to a job site. We're understanding what the circuits are doing now. We're starting to learn that there's different size wires for different types of reasons. How does this translate to job site applications? Let's move over and let's take wattage a second. Let's say we've got 200, 100 watt light fixtures going in a pretty big size building, right? We already know right away, we can figure out quickly, if there's 200 of them, what is our total wattage for that lighting load? If all of them are burning, what's our total wattage going to be? 200 times 100 divided by 100? How would, if each one's 100 watts and we got 200 of them, the total is going to be what? 200 times 100, right?
Yeah.
So what's that total wattage going to be?
20,000.
20,000. So we got 20,000 watts. So now we're looking at that, we know that that lighting load is 20,000 watts. This is why that math has to be strong. Can I go ahead and figure out what my circuit voltage is going to be? Let's say I'm looking at it and I know I'm coming out of this panel here. That panel is going to give me 120 volts for each circuit, right? If I know that, and I know what the amount of lights they want, I know what voltage I have, I can determine what my ampacity is, right?
Yeah.
So let's say I've got 20,000 watts, I'm going to do 120 volts circuit. What is the total ampacity? How do we figure it out?
Divide.
We're using P, I, and E, right? So we got 20,000. We're looking for the amps. So it's P divided by E. 20,000 divided by 120 is going to give me what?
166.6.
How much?
166.6.
166.6 amps. Is that correct? Is that what everybody got? That's a lot of amps for the lighting load, isn't it? This is a pretty good sized building. You're going to have a bunch of lighting circuits, right? Now, we talked about the relationship between power, voltage, and amps. Let's say I'm designing this building and I have the option of using either 277 volts for my lighting load or 120. Which one's going to be more cost effective? Or which one, let me ask this, which one is going to give me a lower number of amps for the same wattage?
277.
The 277, right? Because if we increase the voltage in this relationship, we're going to decrease the amps, right? So y'all figure this one for me. At 277 volts, that same 20,000 watts can be done with how many amps? Our trusty, dusty technology. Y'all were typing this in slow. 72.2. Did everybody else get that?
Yeah.
All right, I am leaning on your technology for those answers. Some of them I can do in my head, but not that one. Now, if I'm doing a job and I'm wanting to kind of reduce costs and reduce what I'm doing, which one would I choose if I had that option and I have that available voltage? Let's go with this one, right? So let's look at it as we're talking about ampacity. Let's say we're going to run that number 12 wire. Who remembers what we said was the ampacity maximum for number 12 solid? I gave it the other day, but if y'all remember that, I won't be shocked. Number 12. 20 amps, right? And remember, if it's stranded, you can put 25 on it, right? And why is that? Because when the stranded wire gives you more ampacity, right? Y'all remember why that was? It's okay. We talked about skin effect, right? Skin effect on the wire. Remember when I was drawing the little crazy electrons that we're trying to get out of the wire? And when it's a solid wire, it starts to heat up the outer edge and you lose a little bit, but you get less of that with stranding. We're going to work with solid though, all right? So we're going to just use that flat 20 amp ampacity. And we're going to go with 20 amp breakers, okay? So let's say we're going to do 20 amp breakers in our panel. And we've decided we're going to do 277 volts. How many breakers am I going to need to run 72.2 amps? All right, Ethan says 4. Now, make sure you write this down. You covered it in electrical 1, but it's going to get a little bit heavier as we go into this. Who remembers the maximum allowable percentage that you're able to put on a breaker as far as the full load amperage on it? Anybody remember us talking about an 80% factor? Vaguely. That disappeared in the summer sun too, didn't it? That's all right. The National Electrical Code only allows us to go up to 80%, right, for continuous full load. Because they really, even though this is rated for 20 amps, what you really don't want to do is push it to that 20 amps, right? Because that 20 amp is where it does what? It's an overcurrent protection. As soon as it senses overcurrent, it's designed to trip. You don't want to push it to that point, but likewise, you really don't want to push it to that point even for it not to trip, but also because you're pushing it at the edge of faulty, okay? So, if we're using an 80% factor, okay, now, what is the maximum amount of ampacity that we're allowed to put to each breaker? What's 80% of 20? 16, right? 20 times 0.8. So now we're at 16. So let's look real close. Now, just double check. How many breakers are we going to need when we rate it out at 80% load? What's 16 times 4? Everybody that likes the basketball tournament will know that automatically. 16 times 4 is what? 64, right? 64 get us to there, so we're going to need one additional one, right? So then you're going to need those 5 breakers. Make sure as we move forward, we're going, and make sure when you apply that load, don't forget that 80%, right? Adjust that overcurrent protection by 80%. The other way you can also do it is you can adjust the actual load by 125%. What is 80% in fractional form? 4/5, right?
Yeah.
If we're applying it to the overcurrent protection, we're doing 4/5. If we apply it to the load, we apply it from the other direction to 5/4. That's 0.8. That's 1.25. You can apply it at either side. I prefer to apply it here because it goes ahead and lets me know where my maximum number is there. Once I get that right from this end with the 80% factor, then I can just account for it on the load side. Okay? I have seen some folks in the past overdo the load and then they forget, or they miss they miscount when they're doing the load. So we know we've got 5 breakers at 277 volts. How about if we ran 30 amp breaker at 120? At 120. So what was our full load amps? At 120 volts. Talk to him. We only got a couple more minutes. We're about to tie this stuff together. 166.6, right? Let's apply 80% to the 30 amp. What do we got? 30 times 0.8. What's 3 times 8?
24.
All right, 24. Okay. 80% of 30 is like 3 times 8. Okay. So we got 24 we can put on each one. Do that math. How many breakers are we going to need for 166.6 amps when we can load 24? Did it come up 6 point something? What was your final answer when you divided it? Oh, they're 166.6 divided by 24. 6 point, so 7. Okay, I was making sure you had rounded it up. So you can use 7 there. So going up to 30 amps on the breaker gets the 120 a little bit closer to what you could do with the 20 amps here, right? Now, this is telling us we can only run the 24 amps. What size wire under this configuration can I use? What is the smallest size wire I can use here? Number 12. Because it's rated for 20, right? That was that answer I just gave you a few minutes ago and it went right through our heads, right? All right, so we could use number 12 here, right? How about here? Can we use number 12 here? Why? Number 12 is rated for what? Number 12 solid is rated for what? 20. This is 24. Even at 80% it's 24, right? So we have to go up to what size? Number 10, right? Trick question. I told you that number 12 stranded is rated to go up to 25 amps, right? So can we run number 12 solid here? Since it goes up to 25 amps? Everybody agree? No. I said trick question, that should have let you know. So this is rated at 24 amps. Remember, that 24 is the 80% number, right? That's what we're going to size the circuit and break up the number of breakers we're using. But if we're using a 30 amp breaker, we still have to use a wire that is also rated for 30 amps. We can't rate our wire based on the 80%. The wire has to be rated and matched up with the overcurrent protection, okay? That seems like a lot, right? Trust me, it's not, okay? We're going to pick back up and we're going to keep rolling through this and these numbers will start to really just sink in. You guys are already doing a really good job of getting that part together, right? But the ampacity of the wire, and that's what the unit that we're really focusing on, but I wanted to take the day to tie it back in because we're still catching our brains back up from being off for the summer, right? But y'all showed me today, your circuit design stuff is getting, you got that back in there. I'm going to throw a quick question out there. Let me see. See if y'all remember this, who's written it down since we've been back. 3/4 inch conduit. We're going to bend up a stub 9. We can Guadalupe turn into a bag quickly to pull out the numbers. What is our take up? What do we pick up? 6. Good. How about if it's a half inch conduit? The half-inch hand bender is going to be 5. You're going to deduct 5, right? 30-degree offset. If I want a 10-inch offset in a piece of pipe and I bend it at 30 degrees, if I want the offset to be 10, what do I multiply that by? Multiply it by 2. So how far are my bends going to be apart? 20. Anybody remember if we do it at 45 degrees? Go with y'all on top of it. So, the correlation between what we're doing and learning, the relationship between the volts, the resistance, the ampacity and the wattage, all of that correlates into understanding that relationship and how the adjustment of one or the application of a certain voltage can change your ampacity, and then it starts to change how you design out what circuits you're going to use, how you're going to size it, and then that ties into the wiring. But remember, your wiring can be larger, right, than the rating for the breaker. You're fine. If you want to run number 8 wire for a circuit on a 30 amp breaker, go for it if you want to spend that money on the wiring, because you're actually adding plenty of protection in there. What you want is always have a situation where the breaker will do its job, right? The overcurrent protection, even if it's not just a breaker, it could be a fuse disconnect, right? Anything with overcurrent protection, you want that to go off before the wire does, right? If we put number 12 wire on a 40 amp breaker, the wire's going to burn up and create a fire hazard before the breaker ever trips. Because the wire's capacity is at 20, which means it's going to give way far before the breaker ever does. So always make sure you're accounting for more overcurrent protection, right? And make sure your wire is capable of carrying every bit of that and more. That's why they use that 80% factor. They want to make sure that you're accounting and that wire can cover, because if we're loading at 16, we want to make sure we've got enough to carry, okay? Any questions on that as far as we're getting into the relation to that? Yes, sir. Oh, you good? So, take the study guide numbers that I just gave you for those sections. That's going to start expanding into the next layer of what we're going to be dealing with wiring types, groupings, and actually specific systems and specific types of wiring, and we're going to dig deeper into the ampacity, okay? The understanding of this is going to help when we roll into the next units, especially when we start getting into the differences on what we're doing and the types of wire we're using in certain environments, and as we start breaking down more of actual load factors, okay? So, really good job today. Take that study guide, make sure you get through 10. We'll go through 10 tomorrow and make sure we're done after we do the discussion. For the rest of the day, take the next few minutes, make sure your JSAs are tidied up. If you got any additional notes to add to them, maybe about 5 minutes, you should be able to turn that in. Any remaining time, groups get together, lay out your game plans for who's going to study for what, and find what material for tomorrow. That will be a graded debate. Graded debate. All right? Everybody good? Any more questions? All right, I'm going to give y'all that time. Turn that in just a few moments.